In 2022, we hit this milestone of 1 trillion music streams, right? What's driving that? Why was 2022 the year of digital music?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Definitely 2022 was a really interesting year for music. Streaming is now the dominant mechanism by which music is enjoyed pretty much globally. And we've seen a slow and steady increase over the last really 8, 9, 10 years. And 2022 was definitely a tipping point. What's driving that? There's a couple of things that are driving it. Really, there's lots of different demographics now starting to embrace streaming. Obviously, it was a younger generations adopting it early on, but now we're seeing older demographics using these stream platforms with really very, very high intensity.
Yes.
And then at the same time, we're seeing a lot of expansion into global markets. So historically focused on more developed Western markets, music consumption really is now global with all the major platforms operating in dozens and dozens of countries around the world. And it's driving this massive renaissance in music that's been going on for years now.
I think that there are some parallels that Caroline and I are focusing on, particularly in the world of video streaming. You know, you think about the Korean market, for example, the success of Squid Games for Netflix on the video front. Everything I see right now on Instagram, and I scroll Instagram a lot, K-pop. K-pop is everywhere. You know, is that one of the drivers that you saw over the last 12 months?
Yeah, K-pop is definitely one of the very important expansions of music and a center for music creation globally. If we look at streaming grew about 9% year on year last year. When we look at 12% last year in the US. If we look at it internationally, growth was about 26%, and a lot of that comes down to these centers of content being created in South Korea, but also really interesting in Latin America. Latin America and Latin music in general had a real breakout year in 2022. Bad Bunny's album was, as we finished up the year, the most popular album across the whole of 2022 since we started tracking sales and consumption in 1991, which is another massive milestone. And actually, when you look at that album from Bad Bunny, if we look at total streaming of Latin music across the course of the year, 1 in 14 streams came from that album, just to give you a sense of how important that was. So K-pop's critical, Latin's critical, and many, many new and emerging areas as well of amazing music creation.
Go back to the value here, Rob, but also speaking to the Instagram scrolling, thinking of the amount that we're currently posting on TikTok and Instagram and using audio within that. Is that getting recompensed? Is that monetary value being found in the world of social media and how we're using music within it?
Yeah, I think social media and short form video has emerged as an incredibly important way that music is being discovered. If we look at younger generations, especially Gen Z, their primary means by which they're discovering music now is music that's included in short form video on TikTok and other platforms. And then what we see typically is a lot of the consumption is then driven to the platforms like the Spotifys, the Apple Musics, Amazon Musics, and others. So short form is a really powerful way of discovering. And then, of course, as music becomes more and more important within these short form video platforms, then the music labels and the artists start to see compensation from that. So going forward, we're definitely going to see a lot more value moving back towards the artists from these platforms. And I think as recently as the last couple of weeks, YouTube's been very clear about how they're going to start sharing their enormous advertising revenue with some of these artists as well, which I think is very welcome and long overdue.
And then these artists are locking in the value in the here and now through deals, right? Deals for their catalogs. How does that evolve in this more recessionary environment as we start to question the valuation of stocks more broadly, assets more broadly? What about catalogs of music? Do they stand up in a recessionary environment?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, we've seen a huge increase in the amount of catalog acquisitions in the last few years. In 2021, the catalog consumption market was over close to 5.5 billion in transactions reported around the acquisition of catalogs by various different entities. It definitely slowed down a little bit in 2022 for fairly obvious reasons, and will slow down a bit more in 2023, mainly because of interest rates. But it hasn't stopped, you know, even in recent weeks, some pretty significant deals being announced. Most recently, Dr. Dre announcing he was selling his catalog or part of his catalog to a consortium of UMG and Shamrock for about $250 million. So these transactions are still happening. And the reason they're happening is because these streams that are attached to these music catalogs, they're very, very easy to generate cash literally from day one. Like, because of consumption's happening on all these streaming platforms, as soon as you make the acquisition, you're generating revenue straight away. And that's incredibly important to some of these financial buyers. And then medium to long term, they start to look at other opportunities to create value from these catalogs. whether it's through brand partnerships or sync opportunities or exploiting and generating revenue from other forms as well. So I think we'll continue to see more catalog acquisitions happening throughout the course of 2023 for sure.